Hello, and good afternoon. Thanks for joining Tech in Asia today for building brand loyalty through exceptional customer experience. In today's session, we'll explore how marketers and product leaders are using best-in-class analytics and deep linking tools to understand the user journeys that are delivering those exceptional experiences that drive brand loyalty. This event is produced by the Tech in Asia Studios team. Tech in Asia Studios is the multimedia production arm of Tech in Asia. They help the Tech in Asia editorial team produce visual content, organize events just like this one, and help brands connect to Tech in Asia's audience through compelling storytelling. My name is Andrew Baisley. I run APAC channel partnerships at Asana. Asana is the work management platform used by millions of teams across 190 countries to help orchestrate their work, from daily tasks to strategic initiatives and everything in between. And I'm very happy to count our hosts today, Tech in Asia, Amplitude, and Branch, as Asana customers. Let's get started. We'll be leaving plenty of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions at any point during this presentation, please put those in the Q&A tab. Now I'd like to invite our panelists on stage as I introduce them to you. First, please welcome Sebastian Nalen, who leads growth marketing at Up. Sebastian is a growth marketer originally from Adland who transitioned client-side with Lonely Planet in London. There, he oversaw their digital channels globally and launched the Lonely Planet Guides app. After returning to his hometown in Melbourne a few years ago, Sebastian got a taste for fintech at MYOB before joining the Up growth team. Up is on a journey to create the #1 bank in Australia for under 35s. Welcome, Sebastian.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Next, we have Govind Kavatori. From its Singapore regional headquarters, Govind heads expansion and new business in Southeast Asia and Australia at Branch, while also overseeing partnerships across Asia. Branch is a tech unicorn based in California that provides mobile linking and measurement infrastructure. Founded in 2015, Branch rapidly expanded its international presence across 10 regions outside of the US and now works with over 50,000 companies worldwide. Welcome, Govind. Good to see you.
Thank you, Andrew. Excited to be here.
Finally, please welcome Julio Bermudez, Vice President, APAC and LATAM at Amplitude, the world's leading product analytics solution that helps companies use their product data to build great product experiences for digital growth. In his role, Julio leads a team across the region that spearheads the company's growth and expansion efforts and manages their existing client portfolio. Julio brings with him more than 15 years of industry experience, of which a decade spanned the digital product space, leading regional and global business strategies for various high-growth companies. His past experiences include managing director of LeanPlum in APAC, head of global sales at BrowserStack, and director of enterprise sales at Optimizely. Julio, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thanks to all of you and everyone watching. I really appreciate you spending time with us today. I think, let's just dive right into the conversation here. And I'd love to start with a little bit of a baseline for our audience. And maybe I like to start with definitions, especially when things feel a little bit elusive, even to me, and I'm in this industry. But I want to start with what is CX? And we define CX as customer experience. Julio, this is your bread and butter. You live and breathe this stuff every day. So how do you define CX when you're talking to your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that it's an evolving question and one that has changed dramatically over the past, several years, and most notably in the past 2 years, as we've now had to really reimagine what our businesses look like in this new digital era. And so arguably, CX is a combination of how people experience your products. And people's products these days are increasingly becoming more and more digital. And so even if you look at models that prior to 2019 and 2020 were offline, we saw a rapid acceleration to becoming a digital product. And so today, of course, you need to have an eye on both things, but it's increasingly becoming clear that having a digital product and having that digital experience is actually at the core of what the word customer experience is today.
Oh, very interesting. We're going to dive into more of those details. Sebastian, why don't we jump over to you? You have experience in a number of different fields that might be applicable here. There's things that sometimes get lumped into CX that maybe shouldn't be there. I know you have the opposite perspective as well. How do you think about kind of ring fencing and defining CX?
Yeah, I think Julio gave a great explanation there. As you alluded to, though, Andrew, I think that often not enough areas are actually kind of within that ring fence. In particular, working now in financial services and fintech, the support area, I think often, that can be a bit of a sort of a back office or an afterthought, and things like UI and design, and the social media team and content is sort of at the top, but like support, I just feel is such an important key component of the experience for a customer. And in our game, when we're dealing with people's money, like it's absolutely critical. So I actually think it's a often forgotten part of customer experience, or if it's not forgotten, it's often kind of pushed to the side, and it certainly shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. So it's fair to say that any opportunity that you have to interact with a customer, whether it's through a UI and they're using your product in an app or on a website, or it's through, maybe they're emailing or calling or chatting with your customer service team, like any touch point, that's CX.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us at Up, you can speak with our support team directly in the app in a sort of messenger casual thread like way, and the insights and feedback that kind of come out are piped through Slack sort of into our internal kind of company, so that we can really get a pulse of what are the issues, and that shouldn't be something that necessarily completely drives what we do in marketing, but it should be something that helps inform what we do and the decisions we make. So I think that's really key to kind of keep a daily check on.
Got it. Sebastian, we lost you a little bit. You're breaking up there, but I think we got the gist of it. Let me jump over to Govind. How do you define CX in the context of the products and services that Branch is providing in the ecosystem?
I think from Branch's perspective, how we look at it is that the world has always been expecting for the best customer experience possible in the physical world as well. I think it's been decades that customer experience has been ruling the business growth. And the idea there is that the customer needs to be given the best experience. If it's in the physical world, whether identifying a customer, building that loyalty, or how is the physical store, if it's a store, developed, etc. In a similar way, we need to transition whatever we have done in the physical world of building those experiences, digital space. So identifying all the touch points of the user, making sure that the user is rightly identified when the user needs to be identified, you taking the user to the right place when the user intends to go to a certain place. So these are some of the key things that have established business continuity and expansion for businesses in the physical world. It's no different in what we are seeing in the digital world. The only difference is the platforms are changed. Now it's technology. Now, because it's technology and because users are interacting with technology broadly across the world, there are things like privacy, protecting the privacy and making sure that we are still able to give that experience for the user, so that the user can have a seamless flow from the time the user sees a brand to the user interacting the brand and making a purchase and staying there, and how brand is able to keep the customer within the platform.
I feel a lot more comfortable hearing these definitions, because whenever I hear acronyms or things like CX or customer experience, it sounds kind of scary. But I guess if you think about it, it's how you show up to your customers and where you do that and the tactics. We'll get into some of that today, and we'll talk about the data that goes into that and the tactics and things that you can do. But at the end of the day, it's just how you show up to your customers. Is that right? Yeah. A lot of nods. Okay. I love like very practical examples. It helps me as a Luddite kind of experience or understand all this stuff in a deeper way. So I'd love to get into some use cases and examples. Sebastian, now that we have a mutual understanding on the definition of CX, can you give us an example of where it sort of plays critical roles within your product? And you gave the support example. Are there other places where that's really critical for you?
Yeah, sure. I think one that we really trumpet and are proud of in our marketing is that you can sign up for an Up bank account within Australia within 3 minutes on your mobile. And our sort of dream, or the original founder's dream, was that if you'd heard about Up and you were in the line at a cafe waiting for a coffee, and someone said, "Hey, there's this awesome new neobank, you should."
Oh,
Or download it, register, and then actually be able to pay for your coffee. Well, at the time you got.
We're having, as it sometimes happens, a little technical difficulties. Sebastian, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but you're breaking up a bit. I think I got the gist of it, though. I love that that analogy, that that idea that you're in the line at a coffee shop, you hear about Up, and by the time you get to the front of the line, you can pay for your coffee with your Up bank account. I mean, if that's not a great customer experience, I don't really know what it is. So hopefully we'll get Sebastian back in a minute and he can tell us a little bit about how they enable some of those sort of things. Maybe go back to you. Can you talk us through a use case where something like deep linking, which is where Branch has a lot of experience, might be really critical to CX?
Right. No, I think just continuing with the example that Sebastian spoke about. So the customer is standing on the line, and while standing on the line, there's a QR code that the customer sees out there and uses the QR code and gets a link that you can buy a coffee right now with 10% off or any incentive. The user downloads the app immediately. The first thing that the user sees is you have basically come to the store and you can avail this and any other incentive that the brand wants to design for the user, making sure that the experience that the user have, even standing on the line, the transition from that offline to online is smooth, and you're closing the loop within that store itself, because the user by the end of the line is going and purchasing the coffee with your bank account. So I think going from there, what is important basically is that the touch points, every touch point that the user interacts should be collected, should be understood, should be analyzed, number one. And of course, before that, when the user interacts with that touch point, what is the experience the user is receiving from that touch point? And let's say there are 12 or 13 touch points at any given point of time for a company, from support to QR code. If all touch points are well taken care of, then you are creating a unified experience for the user, and the data also is unified, because once the user touches that particular QR code or a link, then the job that the deep linking does is to carry forward the data to multiple sources from there. So that's literally basically taking from a place where there's no user data to creating user data. And then that in turn helps in converting for better experiences, because Branch is able to collect that data and make sure that there are enough personas for that data so that it can identify the user when the user comes back.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. You talked a bit about so there's the process from a consumer app and a consumer's point of view, where you want a seamless experience. You want to be in the line, sign up, pay for your coffee by the time you get to the front of the line. Great analogy. And then, so you're talking about some of the data that goes into that and that comes out of that process.
Yeah.
Maybe, Julio, we could jump over to you and talk about some of the things that product owners should be doing to think about how they use that data, and like what those customer touch points could actually mean to for their strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that previously what people used to do would be looking at like demographic data or maybe intent signals, or the fact they were in a city and they visited a particular coffee shop, or they came to your website or your app from a particular region, and people were really fixated on that because that's also how we were kind of serving ads, and there's a pretty rich ecosystem around using demographic data. But if you actually use both of those examples, that's highly behavioral based. Right. So like the behavior that you're showing is actually probably a lot more relevant than necessarily, are you male or female, or are you in San Francisco or, Singapore, right? Because if you're trying to get coffee, you're trying to get coffee. and that's kind of a human activity. And I think that behavioral side of the data is increasingly more important to look at, especially as we're starting to move into this era of, increased scrutiny on privacy. You really do want to just look at people, in a way that isn't necessarily personally identifying them, but is actually looking at them in terms of like, what are they trying to accomplish, right? And so in the examples that we've shown before, right, like I'm obviously trying to accomplish a certain task with the app. And so those behavioral signals are really key drivers in terms of what you should show them from a marketing standpoint, but then also what should that product experience be like? And if we go back to, the customer experience, and it doesn't really matter whether we're talking offline or online, the ultimate goal of anybody who's providing a customer experience is to tailor that to that person. And to tailor to that person generally means that you want to treat them the way they wanted to be treated. And that, generally speaking, is actually based on their behavioral data, more so than necessarily like demographic data.
Does that, so how does that tie back to like value for your customers? And maybe talk a little bit about loyalty here and like what that means for your end customers.
Absolutely. So I won't name names because I always get in trouble for doing this in these webinars. But you can imagine that there's you want to go to work, right? And you have two apps on your phone, and both of them can get you to your work, right? And so in the old days, you could look at it and you could say like, okay, well, great, like it's Julio, he's 35 or whatever, let's send him this ad. But if you're noticing that every single day at around 8 o'clock, I'm traveling to this place called work, most likely the way I'm behaving is I'm utilizing your app to go to work, which almost sounds dumb when you say it out loud, but that wasn't what people were looking at before and utilizing that type of data. And so in fact, what you could do and what we've seen happen is that maybe what you want to do is you want to make sure that people aren't opening up both apps and seeing which one is going to actually be cheaper or whatnot. But maybe what you want to do instead is you want to create loyalty. So you actually say, hey, if you ride 4 days in a row, you get your 5th day free. And the reason why that's a good targeted message is because I'm clearly behaving in a way where I'm going Monday through Friday at the same time. And if you don't have that data, or you don't have the ability to see that type of data, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know. And so what we've seen is that people are unlocking these really critical moments in the customer experience, in the customer journey, by noticing the type of behavior they're exhibiting. And again, I happen to use an example where something was called work, but and so they're lucky enough where you can label that. But again, this could be in the same vein if I was getting coffee, or if there's particular types of ways that I'm spending money from Upbank. Looking at those behaviors are actually the right indicators of what you should market to them, and more importantly, what experience you should drive. Because as we talked about, customer experience is the most important thing. That is where people are competing to get today. And so I think that again, if you have another vector of figuring out how to provide the best experience, especially one that's based on behavior, it's just a tremendous competitive advantage for people that utilize something like Amplitude.
Right. Sebastian, maybe, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, apologies for the connection. Hopefully this is better. But just to build on what Govind and Julio was saying was, a really key thing that can be forgotten with the customer experience stuff and loyalty is consistency throughout your product. And it's one thing for, a lot of brands and products want to optimize like the onboarding and to get people in. But then, often you see these dark patterns of when people want to perhaps like, exit the product or leave, and it's made harder. And I think that is, Julio was talking about behavior. To me, that is like mistreating or disrespecting the behavioral insights you have. And it's actually really important to be consistent with, if you give people a positive experience in one element of your product, you need and you should do that in other parts. So, for us, I mentioned that it's really easy to sign up to our product. But then when we released our joint account offering recently called 2Up, one of the main things we promoted was that it was really easy to get rid of. And a lot of people were like, what are you doing? Like you're a banking product, no one does that. But for us, we were like, well, joint accounts can seem like a scary thing, right? Because it's like you're integrating your life with someone else, but it actually doesn't have to be like that, especially if you're in your 20s or in your early 30s, and who knows what's going to happen with the relationship. So for us, we made our outgoing experience just as good as our ingoing experience, because we just thought that was important and to be consistent with the customer experience. And I feel like even if that means you lose a few customers, it actually adds to the overall trust that your brand and product has.
I think that's a really healthy way to think about it. What, so obviously you are using Branch and Amplitude. Can you just like walk us through a little bit about how you use tools within Up to understand these insights and actually action them? Are there things that when you think about CX, and then in particular, how that drives customer loyalty, whether it's inbound or outbound, but them just feeling really loyal to your brand and you having a good relationship with them, what are some of the tactics that you use and things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had my nose in both tools just a couple of hours ago, so I can happily speak about this. But yeah, so perhaps a good example is 60% of our growth, our acquisition, comes through our referral program, which we call Hook Up a Mate, just to use a bit of an Australian colloquialism. And on the surface, it's a relatively simple referral program where you can give someone $5 once they join Up, and then you also get $5. But there's some good smarts underneath how that actually runs, and it's immensely successful. So, for example, it started off as a kind of one-to-one type referral program where I could, SMS you, and there was a unique code, but we wanted to kind of expand it because it had sort of, people loved Up so much and were talking about it. And so we introduced something that sort of internally we call shareable Hook Up a Mate, which was kind of a one-to-many model where essentially if you wanted, you could, with the swipe of a toggle in the app, set live your own sort of referral page. And then you could essentially use that to share on social media. So, you're telling more people that, hey, join this awesome product. You'll get $5, I'll get $5. And we wanted that to be a smooth experience. So if you go to one of those shareable Hook Up a Mate pages, we utilize the Branch Quick Links API to help to power that. So if you go on mobile, and you tap the button, you flow through to the App Store, can download the app, and you don't have to enter in any unique codes or anything like that, because sort of being powered through Branch, it just kind of sinks you straight in. You get the $5 and the other $5. So that's kind of one nice way where we utilize Branch to kind of power or supercharge that referral program. And then on the Amplitude front, we sort of use that to really assess the invite flow and if that can be optimized. So, when people are going through it, is it super easy for them to send an invite? Are the invite acceptance rates okay? And using the funnel graphs in Amplitude to optimize that is something where we're looking at and testing like right now this week.
Very interesting. Govid, Sebastian mentioned that, and Sebastian, correct me if I'm wrong, that 60% of your growth is coming from this program, Hook Up a Mate. Are you, Govid, I'm curious, in your experience, do you see similar sort of success metrics or leaps when you go from maybe it's sending someone a code or some other kind of simple referral mechanism to using deep links and doing it more programmatically in a way that is, again, a better customer experience?
No, definitely. I think it depends on business versus business in terms of whether referral is giving 60%, because some company might have a very aggressive ad strategy, which could bring them 60 to 70% of the installs, and some company can go organic. But I think the key, I think that's the power of deep links, and that's why Branch started building deep links as well. So the reason also why deep links started gaining more momentum and attention over the past 2 years is because it has the ability to take the content from the app and use that to market to users, just like how it used to happen in the web world. So 15 years ago, when websites were growing, they could use the content to market and bring users to the web world. But in the app world, it's not possible because it's a black box. No content can go out. So app install advertisements were taking the priority position. People just wanted to go and buy installs. Once the user is in, then go and protect the user as much as we can. But now slowly that's changing. Why not we gain the loyalty with best customer experiences right from the acquisition point, through various other organic channels, through various other channels like referrals, product share, programmatic links. For example, if the user is seeing a very good furniture and user wants to share with their friends and they can click on share, that's the main feature, but automatically Branch can have a deep link behind it so that when the user who receives it clicks on it can have a better onboarding experience. So every touch point, every possible touch point, and depending on the business case, that would take its priority, whether it's ads or referrals. I have seen many companies have referrals as the majority contributor. But of course, in any, especially markets like SCA, there's so much of mobile population. It probably makes sense to go the ad route and get the users, but make sure that the experience is delivered in that channel as well.
Is like one better than the other, or does it depend on the app, or is the strategy to just like meet your customers where they are, deliver the experience that they want?
It depends on the growth, and it depends on I think primarily the design of the marketing strategy. For example, if there's e-commerce company, let's say one of the top e-commerce companies in Southeast Asia, probably for them it's quicker to get to their target MAUs with ads, because referrals probably is a long-term approach. Everyone has a referral program, but it would probably contribute more than only like 5 to 10% of the overall growth. So it depends on the marketing strategy and design, and short-term, long-term goals. And of course, things like how much money that you can spend to get users, again, depending on the market.
Got it. I guess some of this in terms of business results are relatively easy to measure, and that you could say like my referral strategy worked or not, and it's driving growth, or my app ad strategy worked or not because it's actually driving growth. But Julio, I want to get your point of view on are there other metrics, are there tools that can be used that actually indicate the success of CX efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if we look at what Sebastian was saying, where he was talking about making the exit just as fast as the entrance, well, how do you justify that? It's probably not conversion rate, it's probably LTV, right? And the thing is that this is where we are trying to help people shift. We're trying to help people shift from just looking at these like conversion rates and great, I got this many people from my emails, I got this many people from my ads, pat myself on the back, I did my job and good, but really thinking about like, well, what kind of users are we getting and what kind of experience are we giving them? And is that actually causing them to retain over time? And if you look at the best growth strategies in the world and the best growth companies in the world, retention was actually at the forefront of it. And there's a really, famous sort of anecdote about that from Facebook, where they found out that the number one thing that was leading to retention was that you'd get 7 friends in 7 days. And they called that their magic number, right? And so, the magic number that they found, there's a magic number for each of these companies, right? And we could probably find that utilizing Amplitude with Upbank or with any business and say, okay, well, what are these things that we can look at that are actually leading indicators of long-term growth? And anytime you're talking about experience, inherently you're thinking long-term, right? And so like, I could jam ads at somebody in my app, and I could maybe make someone see more ads than they used to the previous month. And I can be like, look, my ads per user has gone up, therefore my monetization's gone up. But if retention is falling because of that poor experience, you're not actually going to make more money, right? And that's the thing that I think requires a shift. And I'm really excited about seeing that shift here in Southeast Asia and actually in Asia in general, including Australia, because in the previous mindset, it was just about acquisition, like you said, buy installs, right? And then hopefully you can keep them, to now thinking through a much more coherent, more long-term strategy around how are we actually not only getting users, but monetizing users. And we see this a lot with our partners in India, right? Like, and Indonesia. You want users? Great, you can go get users, but can you monetize them? And the way you monetize them is through, that customer experience, which, like you said, really depends on the types of metrics you're putting on people, because people, you get what you measure. People are going to go after their metrics, right? And if you're giving somebody just the metric of installs or conversion rate or ads per user or things like that, you may actually be missing the boat on more leading indicators of longer term success. And that actually we've seen is one of the primary drivers of whether or not you grow or you don't grow, right? Like, because you could actually have 2x the retention of, company A could have 2x the acquisition of company B, but just a 15% change in retention will actually cause the company that has half the acquisition to be twice the size of the company in less than 3 years. So these are the levers that we're trying to open people's eyes to, that we've been able to successfully do in Silicon Valley and in the United States, and are now trying to bring it to Asia and beyond.
That's fascinating. So it's not just LTV in terms of the V is value of the customer and that to your business, but it's you should really be thinking about the LTV of your metrics as well. Like, what is the
that's actually a really good insight. So kudos for the insight. Now I'm gonna use that now. But yeah, I mean, I think that and Govind, I think, put it very well. Every company is different, right? There's different stages of company as well too, right? Like if you have 0 users, you can't say, well, I'm going to go for retention, because you need to go acquire the users, right? But it's about kind of having a sober look at well, where is my business and where do I want to go? And what are those different strategies? And if you start looking at the math, very quickly, retention plays a dramatic impact on, what your actual growth rates will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sorry, Sebastian, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in because Julio's absolutely speaking my language now, and I know I've seen Amplitude share lots from Brian Balfour and
Yes,
Andrew
exactly.
Chen and those kind of folks, and I completely agree. Yeah, because it is 100% about retention, but it's it needs to be good retention. It's not just about keeping people around against their will and sort of reducing churn and that sort of thing. It actually comes back to retaining people by continually showing them value through your product. And that's one of the main things we use Amplitude's dashboards and notebooks for, is to actually look are the particular features that we feel give real value to people, helping them save money, are they being utilized day in, day out? Because if they are, and you're keeping people around and continually giving them value, then the growth can take care of itself, right? Because you're just constantly creating value. They'll consistently refer you, and any ad channels are simply inputs or accelerants.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we actually help people measure, to bring this to a very concrete way, is we have this concept of helping you find your power user, right? So to your point, it's not just about retaining all users. It's about finding out, what does the best user look like? And in fact, we talk about this in a marketing sense, ideal client profile, but we don't really talk about it from a data standpoint sometimes. And so if we actually look at okay, who's a power user? And then what are the behaviors that they exhibit? And then how do we actually nudge people along this path to become looking like them? And actually, this is the secret to the Netflix growth story, right? They understand what their power users look like, and they just are slowly helping people, look like that. And to your point, Sebastian, I think is 100% spot on. There's a great nuance there, which is, it's not just about having every single customer. Some customers aren't the right customers for your business, but it's about, can we actually identify through metrics, meaning at scale, not just calling people and asking them, can we identify through metrics and through behaviors, what does actually the right customer look like? And then utilizing things like branching, let's go get more of those people, right? And those are the healthy ways to grow our business. And that I think when people really start to think that way, they're going to see some great outcomes the way Upbank has.
Let's double click on the metrics and the data, because I think that's really interesting and could be valuable for the people listening today. Before we get to that, there are questions coming in on the Q&A, so thank you for those. If you're listening, you have questions, please feel free to throw them in there and we'll get to them shortly. There was also, I saw a note in the chat from Iris Nung, who asked, does LTV equal lifetime value? And yes, that is right. And this is the danger of all these acronyms. I do it too.
My fault.
No, it's totally. Yeah, LTV is lifetime value, measuring the value of I guess anything over forever, basically. So Sebastian, I want to dive into the data a little bit more with you. I guess like anything, the devil's in the details on these things. So are there pieces of information and data as you started on this journey and started looking at customer experience and loyalty, LTV, that surprised you? And how did you act on that information?
Yeah, sure. My philosophy is similar to I watched a recent Amplitude session, which was someone from the Calm app in the States, I think, talking about how that phrase you've heard before of being data informed, not data led, and I'm a big proponent of that. Have all the metrics, be immersed in them, absorb them, but then sort of don't blindly be led by them. Like you need to stitch them together and add your own sort of experience and nuance and instinct. And I think sort of one of the places where we've done that is I mentioned our Hook Up a Mate program, which sort of has Amplitude components and branch components and how powerful it is for us. We sort of gave that a boost earlier in the year and sort of did like double the rewards kind of thing. I think it was in February, which was awesome, right? Because, hockey stick up, which was great. But, there's a point where when you're dialing up that incentive, inevitably like some of the quality goes down, right? So the volume's good, but the quality is going down. And so we were watching that every day, kind of thinking like, is this still good growth? Like how legit is this still? And Julio mentioned leading indicators, which can be tricky. So we were looking at a bunch of leading indicators, trying to get a sense of like, how do we know in the moment whilst this is happening, if this is good growth or not, and how we find like the good users being invited. And we didn't have a definitive metric for that. We had a bunch of different ones that we were kind of stitching together, like fund rate, after they signed up, how many funded, and then, active rate, like how many then made a purchase. But it still sort of didn't quite give us that leading indicator. They were sort of trailing or lagging indicators. And I think sort of using our core BI tool, Metabase, one of the things we ended up deciding on as a proxy was, well, if you look at the tenure of the customer who's inviting someone, how long they've been around for, there was a pretty good correlation there around, well, if you're a brand new customer, you're probably not the greatest of referrer because you probably don't know the value yet. So you're probably just getting other low qualities. So, like we didn't even definitively prove that, but that's, I think, in the real world, how you need to kind of, you need to move fast, use the metrics you have, create hypotheses, and then kind of come up with, proxies to make decisions. And that was a pretty good example where that kind of informed what we did next with our program based on that proxy customer tenure metric.
Oh, interesting. So could that I have no idea if you did this or considered it, but could that lead to something like you pay a different type of referral bonus to someone who has like more tenure versus someone who's new to the app? Yeah,
totally, 100%. That's like something on our cards as a kind of like next build to that program, because it's sort of like, as Julio was saying, how do you kind of create more of the power users sort of thing, rather than kind of almost being too democratic in a way.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. If they're bringing in the highest quality new users, then why wouldn't you reward them appropriately? I think there's probably a lot of analogies for similar types of behavior in the data, whether even if it's a very different type of product. Govind, I want to jump over to you and ask you about data that is derived from the product that you're providing in deep linking that can be actionable for product teams. So like when you think, obviously there's a utility to it all. It brings the end user to right where they want to be, which is a great experience. What other data becomes available and actionable when that happens?
Yeah, I think one of the common misconceptions of deep linking is that it takes the user to the right page inside the app, but no one actually really talks about what about the data that the link is bringing from the world outside of the app to inside of the app. And that's what is the powerhouse. And that's what is Sebastian talking about. Mm-hmm. And also Julio, that data is what will sort of let us know our ideal customer profile. If a person is bringing 5 other people similar to that person into the platform, that is equivalent to of running 2 months of ads probably, because that much of a value those 6 users can bring to the company. So in terms of data points, the key is, like, for example, one of the things that a very popular company in the US does is it creates personalized onboarding experiences for users. For example, if I share something that I really like to my friend, the moment that person opens and downloads the app, the first thing that the user sees in the app is that your friend Govind shared for you to go check this out. So that creates the personalized experience. If I did it and shared it to my friend, he or she would definitely go and look at it and probably even purchase. And that way, so in the entire cycle of app journey, there is one key piece, which is uh, install to activation. There are a lot of users who might install the app, but they might not activate it. So what are we doing for those users so that the install to activation rate goes up? That is where the product team can really use deep linking data to make sure they personalize these experiences to different cohorts or different individual, depending on the case. So ultimately, the data can be unlimited. I think that's the entire point. We want to make sure that the data that's in the app world comes out, so that we could use that data to attract people back in instead of just showing app install ads. So in various cases, that could be data that's related to a specific content, specific offer, incentive across all touch points like email, and we can connect the users from, let's say, an ad to app to, again, email touch point, then push notification. So that data will help make sure that the flow is seamless across.
I love that example too, of just bringing in, like, if I share something to someone, when they look at it, it's not just that they're going to the right place, that you know, which you would just expect from an app, but it's also bringing along some information that I shared it.
Yeah.
Which gives a lot, that's a human touch. It's like if I held their hand and walked them into a coffee shop and said, I really like this coffee, but bringing that to the app world, I think that's really special. Julio, when you're working with your customers and getting into the weeds of all the data and interpreting attribution data and LTV data, all these signals, what are the biggest pitfalls that you think people need to look out for?
Yeah, well, at first I want to be clear that people much smarter than me help our customers dive into the data, but I appreciate the confidence in my ability to help with that. No, but I think that Sebastian, pretty well, where you want to be data informed, right? And certain times you want to be data driven, but at the same time, we don't necessarily want to lose sight of what the global maximum is at the expense of, or lose sight of the global maximum because we're just going for the global or not the local maximum, excuse me, that wasn't very articulate. Going so hard at the local maximum that we ignore the global maximum, right? And so I think that what that requires is hypothesis generation, and that's one of the most exciting parts, in my opinion, about Amplitude. And maybe it's because I spent so many years helping build Optimizely, and building out A/B testing for many years in a prior life. And then now we are actually launching Experiment, and we've launched that very recently. So I'm back in the game of experimentation. I'm really excited about that. And so it's like, the idea is that, you can refine, but sometimes you got to take those shots, right? And those shots, we refer to them as bets. We refer to them as product bets. It's sort of the language that we use, and we want to help companies make bigger product bets. And I think that that's the only way that you can do that without tons of risk, is by having a really good set of tools that helps you create these hypotheses, right? And so I think that that's something that there's still art in this world, right? It's not only science. And I think that when you combine art and science together is when you get, scalable, repeatable, incredible things, right? Like if you think about, a painting, yeah, that's really incredible and amazing. But like when you look at a building, like you can go rebuild that building somewhere else, right? I can take that to a different market or a different country and rebuild that. And so, but at the same time, you don't just want to, build beige boxes. You want to build something that excites people. And I think that requires you to look at your data, dive deep into it and really look for those insights, but at the same time, really go out there and make the bets and come up with the hypotheses. And if we can help you make better hypotheses at the end of the day, then I feel like we've done a big part of our job, because there's a large chance that you'll be able to actually move your business forward in a way where you didn't necessarily know, because you're so tied up in optimization. And sometimes I refer to that as, the art of the possible, right? And that can be like on an app front, that can also be from a business, so maybe I saw some comments around like, well, I'm trying to build just this business. How do I incorporate this, right? And it's like, if you have like a sales process and you have people going through it, I mean, yeah, you can refine each stage and you can make that better and better, but that's like optimization. But if you can find new types of people to go market to, or you can find a new market to enter, or, now you're actually increasing the total addressable market that you have, which inherently just has a ton of leverage. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk, and that's why you need the right data to kind of inform you where you should make those bets.
Awesome. I think that's really insightful, and very excited about the ability to not only have the data and the insights and some platform to recommend what bets you could be placing, but also the framework for experimenting on that as well, which is exciting. Okay, we're nearing the end here, and I want to talk about just the field of CX in general. It's really fast moving. It's relatively new, super agile. Before we get into that, there's a bunch of questions coming into the Q&A. Really good questions. We're definitely going to get to those. If you are listening and you have questions, please jump over to the Q&A tab and put those in there now so we can start looking through those as we work through this final section. So Govit, I'll go back to you. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I think CX is perhaps one of the fastest moving fields. It's pretty complex. It's tied to all these other concepts like loyalty and LTV and retention. How would you recommend for anyone listening today how they can keep on top of all of this?
I think the key is to treat the experience in a simpler way instead of complicating it, because ultimately the way we started is that experience is expected everywhere, customer experience. So keeping it simple and making sure that every touch point of the user is well taken care of, and then the data is analyzed, and making sure that the decisions based on the data are well relevant. So let me just also talk a little about how it makes sense for us to stay ahead of the curve. Is that the next phase basically is to merge offline and online world. So just like how Sebastian took an example of how a user can sign up for a banking standing in the queue, even if taking some of the other examples like airline. So what if there's a world where from the point where the user books the ticket to the point where the user arrives back in the destination airport, everything is digital. And this is actually one of the things that user experiences are key about, and links as well supported. We're making sure that every point from the time the user books the ticket to the time check-in, security, boarding, arrival is all connected to each other, and there is no interaction anywhere with any person as such. So how do we merge these two worlds? And I think that's the next big bet. Every traditional company out there is looking to come to the digital space. And every company right now in the digital space is looking to make sure that their markets are expanded to every user out there. So ultimately, we'll have to find that balance, where to use digital space and where to make sure that the physical interaction is coming in, and stitch those two methods, make sure that the experience is superior than ever, because now we have both models that we're working on. And right now, we personally work with many such companies on such strategies. One of such is standing in the queue, taking coffee through QR code. QR code is an essential piece over here, and in the links are essential piece so that the user comes in. Now, once this data is captured, just the imagination of what we can do that with data is really up to us. I'm not really sure if we have such data right now. Platforms like Amplitude tracking that data and showing much richer product analytics on the top of it, I think would really be key. One of the big airlines in the US is doing it with us right now, where they're trying to achieve complete digital from booking to arrival. And it is important that we reiterate what works in the platform and what works in the physical world. And we need more technologies and tools to help companies analyze that.
Awesome. Sebastian, you mentioned, and I don't know, this is why I'm asking you, I don't know who these guys are, if it's even relevant, but you mentioned earlier two names, Brian Balfour and Andrew Chen. Who are they, and how do you keep on top of all of this CX stuff?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like maybe a few people on the call know, I can see Julio smiling, but like in Australia, we gobble up some of the good stuff that we see from Silicon Valley. They're both sort of original, correct me if I'm wrong here, Julio, but original kind of masterminds behind the Reforge growth program. which, has, gurus who have come from Airbnb and Uber and Facebook. And I think what I like about their philosophy as part of what they teach as part of Reforge is kind of what we were touching on earlier, where it all comes back to value, like what is the value you're creating for the customer, and sort of, like revenue and growth falls out of that. So yeah, I'd really encourage anyone, to sort of have a look at some of, this is an unpaid plug for Reforge, but some of the resources and the articles from them about growth loops and inputs and outputs around creating value is just, we've found it so invaluable, and yeah, just really, really interesting, useful stuff.
No, that's great, because I want people listening to be able to know, who should they turn to, who should they trust. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially when it comes to things like growth tactics. There's a lot of black hat marketing. There's shady affiliate stuff. I know the world that I operate in, and channel partnerships, and that involves affiliates as well. It can get a little bit murky, and it's important for, I think, everyone to know how to avoid those things as well.
Totally. And I think like growth hacking is a murky area, but sustainable growth at scale is a sort of different thing. And I think if you keep it about the value and not just about bumping up your business metrics, then like you'll choose the right path.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, I want to jump to Q&A. Julio, you talked about this earlier, so maybe you can expand on it a little bit. But Eva Fu asked, what are some of the metrics that you use to assess the success of customer experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I'll answer with a practical framework, and actually dovetails with what Sebastian was saying. So we're big proponents of what we call the North Star framework. And the idea of the North Star framework is to be able to work out for your business, what are the leading indicators to growth, right? And one of the key things is that you want to try to find that metric within your business that is not only a core driver of your value, but most importantly, the value that you give to your customer. And this gets into sort of that Reforge mindset. And again, to add on to that, our first user conference, everybody thought was going to be about Amplitude, and we actually just had 1,700 product managers. And this was a lot back in 2014, 15, I think it was 2015. 1,700 product managers, we just put them all through Reforge, right? And we did a big, huge group one. And we had Andrew Chen and we had Brian Balfour there in person. And so again, the idea is that there's you can check this out, North Star framework. You can Google it. Most likely, hopefully, my team's doing a good job. You'll come to my website first. But all jokes aside, it's a practical framework for you to help develop that, right? And if you're interested in learning more, our team is also well trained in helping people run those workshops, and it's something that we do for our customers as well. And so I know, Sebastian, you're a customer. If you want to do that together, we can do that after this call as well too. I know I'll definitely would love to help you guys out. But the idea is that it's not a tactic. It's not like this one magic bullet. It's really about the right framework, and that will evolve over time, kind of to your comment around the lifetime value of a metric. And so I highly recommend looking at that, because you can find the right leading indicators. And then the only other quick thing that I'll put out there is that a lot of times we obsess with lagging indicators. How many daily active users do I have? How many monthly active users? What's my revenue per user? Like, all those things are great and they're super important, and that's how you get the board happy and your investors and public market, depending on your company, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about how do you actually affect those numbers, how do you actually do your day-to-day work within the right sort of framework, you got to have something like the North Star framework, or there's the engagement ladders and all the things that essentially Sebastian talked about. Are key things that can actually sustainably and predictably grow your business.
Okay, we have two questions that are related from anonymous. They're anonymous questions. One of them is, besides referral and ads, is there any strategy that works for loyalty? How about bundles or loyalty programs? And the other related question is, if your company just started a loyalty program, what are the actual best metrics you should use to pay attention, or that you should pay attention to and measure? I guess the question is, besides referrals and ads, what growth strategies work for driving loyalty? And then what are the metrics, if you're just starting out, on understanding loyalty? Like, what are the metrics that actually give you that understanding?
I'm happy to speak a little bit just to that first part of that question, where I'd say, that annoying answer of it depends on your business, because to me, it really comes back to, don't go after someone else's metric, like specifically, what are you trying to achieve? And I think it doesn't have to be about a gold channel. It can work backwards from the thing that you're trying to achieve as part of that. So for example, with us, we've just been running in Australia a 3-day promotion called Perk Up, where you basically get, if you buy your coffee with your Up card, you get it cashed back. Now what's cool about that is you basically, you don't have to do anything to enter, really. Like, you just have to be a customer and buy a coffee, and there's that kind of variable reward factor that and for us, we came up with that promotion going back from the fact that we were like, well, we really want to help build the habit of using our products, so people aren't just using it monthly, but they're using it weekly or daily. Okay, what's something where you do that? Oh, perhaps your morning coffee. Okay, what if we could, and that was the line of logic where we worked it out. It was a very bespoke thing. We tried it once, it did well, and now we've done it like a bunch of months here and there. We just did it to round out the financial year. So I think work back from the specific thing you're trying to achieve, because it's not going to be just some new cool, hip, trendy channel, or if someone tells you it is, that'll be a flash in the pan.
Any thoughts on the best metrics to know if you're just starting that loyalty program, from anyone on the panel?
I can touch upon that. I think I will follow up on exactly what Sebastian said, that the KPI is not going to be either install nor purchase, nothing, because what you're looking for is to build a loyalty, and you cannot put a tag of in growth in terms of a particular KPI like an install. However, having said that, you can still track that kind of a data. That data is available if the links are used, where the influencers, number of influencers, how many are sharing the link, how many are installing, how many are purchasing, what are the conversions, all of that data is available. But I want to double down that it probably doesn't matter as much as if you have a goal that you have established way early on, that this is the reason why we have the loyalty program in the first place.
Awesome. Sebastian, you shared a resource with us in the chat, but you sent it just to the panelists. So I don't know if you want to reshare it to all of the attendees, because I think it would be really helpful for them to read what you had sent. While we do that, I want to give a quick plug and a shout out to the Tech in Asia conference that's coming up. We'll come back. I think we're going to squeeze in time for one more question, if we can do that. But Tech in Asia's annual flagship conference is back on October 12th and 13th. In this edition, the conference will explore Southeast Asia's global debut with headline-making SPACs, mergers, investments. You'll have an opportunity to learn from leading founders, investors, tech leaders who will reveal how they're capturing the momentum of Southeast Asia's tech industry. You can also catch Amplitude again. They'll have a speaking session at the conference. There'll be opportunities to pitch startups, meet investors, do business networking. It's definitely not to be missed. I have attended for several years in a row. It's really incredible. If you are a live, Tech in Asia Live or a core subscriber, you can RSVP at any time at no additional cost. If you're not a subscriber to Tech in Asia, you can get early bird tickets right now for around $29 USD. If you wait, it'll be around $79 or $80. So that's just a limited time offer. Definitely recommend it. Let's jump in. One last question. We don't really have time, but I'm going to do it anyway. From Anna Mortola asked, how can I build, or what do I have to consider in my customer experience strategy if I'm just starting my business? In her case, it's a law firm. What tools should she use? I guess one basic question would be, is Amplitude and Branch only for scale-ups and established businesses, or can someone just starting their business take advantage of the tools? And what other considerations should Anna think about?
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly start off. We're big proponents, and actually, if you look at some of the thought leaders in the product world, of making sure you have measurement before you launch your product, because the last thing you want to do is launch your product and be like, oh, what worked, what didn't work, and it's like, oh, well, now we have enough, I don't know, customers, whatever, like, let's actually care about it. Like, because I think what it's really all about is finding those baselines and then testing things against them, right? And one of the things I've always thought about when building startups or regions or, investing, whatever it has been in over the past 10 years or so, has been how quickly can I generate a baseline to measure against, right? And it doesn't even have to be the right thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing, but like, if you don't have something to measure against, you don't know if you're doing better or not, or worse, right? And so, I think some people talk a lot about MVP, most, minimum viable product to get to a market, or they talk about product market fit. Those are really great, things that you need to have. But if you don't have a general idea of at least what a baseline is, or you don't have the systems to try to get to a baseline fast, and even if that is a data informed hypothesis than a data driven hypothesis, you just won't be able to grow as fast. And so it doesn't matter whether you're talking about businesses or apps or whatnot, like you got to try to get to that point.
Awesome. Any final words from anyone else?
I'd just add to that, like agree with Julio, like you need to have that measurement in place, but, be wary of over measuring, right? Like you can, especially at the outset, you can get analysis paralysis. And I think that kind of view of like North Star metrics is like, you're actually better off measuring less, but make sure the things that you do measure, or at least if you like measure a bit, but focus on only a couple of things, because otherwise, you can kind of get to the point where there's too many metrics and you're drowning in it a bit. So I'd say, really focus on like have your North Star metric, and then maybe you like 2 or 3 backup metrics, and just focus on that to start with.
I think we could continue this conversation for a long time, but unfortunately we are out of time. I've learned so much today. I hope that all of our viewers have as well. I really want to thank everyone for joining us, but especially to our panelists, Govid, Julio, Sebastian. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge with all of Tech in Asia's readers. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
so much, guys.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye-bye.